There's lots of random healing that's happening just by being with people and like consoling people and having friends and stuff. But we're talking about sort of a step up from that deliberate healing, where there is the apparent appearance of a healer and the apparent appearance of someone to be healed, that wants to be healed. Then the healer in this scenario, the only way they can heal is if they see that person as more perfect than they see themselves. If they see that person to be healed or the entity to be healed in its completeness, in its wholeness, in its perfection. Otherwise, that their vibration as a healer is not aligned to their alignment, to their healed self. And then they cannot give off that opportunity. They cannot provide that catalyst for self-healing. They cannot offer the vibration for the other person to accept that configuration. Doesn't mean we should never call people out on their stuff. Oh, because it would reinforce their lack beliefs. Yeah, sometimes maybe, but there is also an art to calling people out on their stuff when that's needed. But at the same time, especially if we're in the position of healer, we need to make sure that we see them as perfect. So pity would be an example of me as a healer not seeing the wholeness and perfection of the entity that comes to be healed. So then I can't really offer anything. But we do project a lot of our pity, and we have such a soft spot for the pity, and we feel so afraid of our loneliness, of not being good enough, not blending in with society, being an outcast, that we just try to sort of keep everybody from feeling those emotions. And we try to prevent ourselves from seeing those distortions because it's better to be ignorant of it and just like be nice to each other. But it's actually very destructive. Niceness can be very unhealing, can be very unloving. Whereas clear, firm reflection can be very loving, even if the ego doesn't like it. They have the choice to accept the configuration, at least. Before that, they didn't. If I just play into your self-wallowing self-pity and victimization and your belief in why me, it's like, oh yeah, why you, this really sucks for you. Occasionally that can help to ease things. So they can like, okay, now I'm heard, someone recognizes my situation. That can be healing sometimes. But also a lot of the times it's not. It's a case-by-case basis. The healer does not heal. The crystallized healer, which is another way of saying the integrated, matured, balanced, advanced healer, not just someone who's just kind of starting out and wants to be a healer, but someone who has matured in their self-knowledge and their self-acceptance and their knowledge of the Creator within themselves. The crystallized healer is a channel for intelligent energy, which offers an opportunity to an entity that it might heal itself. In no case is there another description of healing.
In no case is there another description of healing?
In other words, there is no exception to this rule, that all healing is self-healing.
Oh, cool.
And that there is no healer that heals. It is only offering an opportunity or catalyst or example or new configuration example that entity can then use to heal itself. In no case is there another description of healing. In other words, there's no exception to this rule.
And from the perspective of the healer, because I remember something in the Law of One, which brings up an obvious but decent example of a healer, which would be Jesus. And one of the examples was that, to simplify it, Jesus wouldn't take credit for the healing. And they said something like, Jesus would say at the end of the healing or the experience of healing, tell no one. So it seems like there is something important about it being a pure service without requiring any sort of credit for it.
Also, that particular quote of "Now go home and tell no one," or "Go forth and tell no one," when he had performed a miraculous healing, when he had offered a new configuration and they believed so much in Jesus that they accepted that configuration and now they were suddenly healed, miraculously healed, which can happen very instantaneously, even on a physical level. Miraculous healings do occur all the time in all of our bodies. We just don't know it. It is my conviction that we have many cancerous cells every day and they get healed every day as long as we stay in alignment. And there's plenty of accounts by now, testimonies and so forth, of people who actually demonstrate spontaneous healing within a matter of seconds. So all these things are definitely possible. So imagine Jesus being the catalyst, the example, the provider, the inspiration for that person to accept that new configuration. And so they have now healed. If they now go home and meet their skeptic parents or their skeptic brothers or their skeptic friends who are in a completely different vibrational paradigm, and this person has just freshly, vulnerably been healed from a condition that has affected their belief system over time. Now they're presented with this new configuration, but it hasn't been anchored in yet. Go home and tell no one, because you'll get sick again. You'll get talked out of this new configuration unless you've anchored yourself in that new configuration.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And also it could be interpreted as, yes, go home and tell no one, because I don't want this to glorify this idea of me as a healer. That would give out a wrong image or wrong understanding. So often this happens, man. And it's like almost painful to watch. People enter a new environment, or they go to a retreat, say, and they just by being in the retreat and by being surrounded by people of a different state of consciousness than they're used to in their circles, and through their interactions with me and the people there, and with themselves there, because their intention to show up for that retreat is to transform something and to heal something within themselves. They come there, a new configuration is offered, but the issue is it's provided in a different setting. It's a different environment than they're typically in. Now they associate it with that environment, right? Subconsciously. So they get the healing there, or the transformation, or the awakening, or the realization, or the enlightenment moment, or whatever it is. Now they go back to their old environment, but they haven't anchored it in. They're not convinced of it yet. It's still fresh. It still needs to be adjusted to. It still needs to become believed in. Now they go back to an environment that's more skeptical, perhaps. That is more just lower frequency, slow vibration people, which most people are compared to what we're talking about here. It's just slow, it's just dense, it's just Newtonian, it's just like skeptical, it's just realistic, what they think is realistic, which is not, but it's realistic to them. So now this person that's like freshly entered into this new healed state, this transformed state, they can see clearly again for themselves. They're no longer depressed. They're actually a different person. But because they haven't fully convinced themselves of that new state yet, they go back into an environment which only inspires the opposite. And they fall back in that belief. And then it requires their true self-work and their true self-persistence and self-effort to anchor in that new conviction. So it's similar to, go home and tell no one.